It's the middle of the night, after a long Seder, so I'm going to ask you to keep your answers concise and to the point. What is the substance and purpose of your teaching?
I've spoken openly to the world. And I've always taught in synagogues and the temple where the religious leaders gather.
That's not an answer.
And I've said nothing in secret. If you wanted this information, you've had many opportunities to obtain it from witnesses.
I want to hear it from you.
It's a matter of public record.
Do you know who you're talking to?
How many people have you told your lies to?
I haven't lied. So, none.
Could your teachings be interpreted as calls to violence?
Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. They know.
If we ban you from ever teaching publicly again, will you comply?
I've also answered that previously as well.
Is that how you answer the Kohen Hagadol?
The first look at Season 6 immediately hints at a world on edge, a world that can already feel the tremors of what's coming. From the very beginning, we see the tension tightening around Jesus and his disciples like a rope being pulled from both ends. The streets feel different. The faces in the crowds feel different. There is this haunting silence that sits underneath the noise of Jerusalem, almost like the city itself knows that the most significant moments in human history are about to unfold right within its walls. Even the way the early scenes are shot creates a feeling of spiritual weight. You sense fear, confusion, bravery, and destiny all tangled together, and it hits you in a way that's almost impossible to explain. And I love that The Chosen doesn't shy away from the emotional complexity. It doesn't rush anything. It makes you sit with the reality that these were real people walking into a moment that would change the entire world forever. One of the new scenes teased shows the disciples in a way we haven't seen them before. Exhausted, restless, and visibly shaken. Not because of physical danger, although that is certainly coming, but because their world is shifting faster than they can understand it. Their faith is being stretched. Their loyalty is being tested. Their hearts are being pulled in directions they didn't expect. And you can feel this sense of something is about to break. And what truly grips me is how The Chosen captures this without using big dramatic speeches or flashy moments. Sometimes it's just a quiet glance, or the look of fear in someone's eyes, or the way Jesus walks through a crowd with a calm that feels almost unearthly. There's power in that silence, power in the unspoken, and Season 6 seems to be leaning heavily into that artistic choice. Another moment we get in these first look scenes is Jesus surrounded by growing hostility. You can see the religious leaders whispering, watching, planning. Their eyes are cold. Their expressions are sharp. There's this chilling feeling that the walls are closing in around him, and the show makes that tension almost suffocating. And yet, Jesus remains steady. He has this peaceful certainty that makes the chaos around him feel even louder. His stillness is what breaks you. The more people plot against him, the more he stands firm, almost as if he's carrying something far greater than fear, something eternal. And honestly, I can't help but get chills seeing that contrast. The world is getting darker, but he isn't. The new scenes also show us moments of love, tenderness, and friendship that feel even more precious because we know what's coming. The disciples laughing during a quiet moment, Mary Magdalene looking at Jesus with a mix of love and worry, John writing observations that he doesn't yet know will become scripture. These small glimpses hurt in the best possible way. They remind us that this wasn't a distant story or a cold historical event. These were friends. These were families. These were people who loved Jesus deeply. And Season 6 is making sure we feel that before everything begins to unravel. And personally, I think that's what's making this season hit so hard already. It's not just telling the story of the crucifixion. It's telling the story of the hearts that would be shattered by it. And let's talk about Jesus in these scenes, because Jonathan Roumie is already delivering a performance that looks absolutely breathtaking. The way he carries himself this season is different. Still gentle, still compassionate, but heavier. There's a quiet sadness in him, but also a fierce resolve. In one early moment, when he pauses and looks out over the city, it almost feels like he's saying goodbye without speaking a word. And that hits so deep. That's the kind of emotional detail that The Chosen does better than any other biblical series. It makes you feel the humanity of Jesus while reminding you of his divinity. That combination is what makes every moment so deeply moving. But the first look scenes also reveal something else. This season isn't just emotional, it's intense. There's tension in every conversation, every movement, every shadow in the background. Even the music in these early previews feels heavier. It's slower, deeper, almost aching with the weight of what's coming. It doesn't spoil anything, but it prepares your heart in a way that honestly feels necessary. Season 6 is not going to be easy to watch. It's going to be heartbreaking. It's going to be spiritually overwhelming. But it's going to be beautiful in a way that stays with you long after the final episode. This is only the beginning. And if the first look is already hitting this hard, I can't imagine what it will feel like when the full season releases. Season 6 is clearly shaping up to be the most powerful chapter The Chosen has ever created, and these early scenes prove it. The deeper we go into these early glimpses of The Chosen Season 6, the clearer it becomes that the emotional landscape of this season is unlike anything we've seen before. The tone is darker, the stakes are higher, and the sense of approaching destiny feels almost overwhelming, even in the short moments we've been allowed to see. One of the most striking things about these first look scenes is how they show the disciples beginning to confront the reality that Jesus' mission is moving towards something they never imagined. We see them wrestling with confusion and fear, but also clinging to hope with everything they have left. There's a moment where Thomas looks at Jesus with this sinking sadness in his eyes, as if he understands that something irreversible is about to happen, and that single expression carries more emotional weight than an entire monologue. You can tell the disciples are desperately trying to make sense of the shift in Jesus' behavior. His quieter tone, his heavier expressions, the way he seems both present with them and focused on something far beyond them. And this tension between the earthly and the divine is becoming one of the most powerful elements of Season 6. It creates an atmosphere where every breath, every glance, and every step feels meaningful and intentional, like a countdown to a moment that will change the world. But what truly pulls you in is how beautifully the show captures the growing divide between the disciples' expectations and Jesus' actual mission. They want victory, rescue, triumph. They want a Messiah who overthrows Rome and restores Israel. And yet, what they're witnessing is a Messiah who walks towards suffering with unwavering resolve. This difference creates a painful confusion that we can already feel in these new scenes. Moments that used to feel light and hopeful now carry shadows, as if there's a silent sorrow underneath everything. And honestly, this emotional layering is what makes this season already feel so profound. The disciples aren't just characters. They're mirrors of how we often misunderstand God's plans, believing they should match our desires instead of trusting they go beyond what we can comprehend. And The Chosen is leaning deeply into that theme this season. Another powerful part of these new scenes is the growing hostility surrounding Jesus. The tension around the religious leaders is becoming suffocating. You can practically feel their plotting getting sharper, colder, and more desperate. They aren't simply annoyed by Jesus anymore. They're threatened by him. You see it in their eyes as they watch him teach in the temple, whispering with each other, trying to twist his words into something dangerous. These glimpses show us how carefully the show is building the political and spiritual pressure that will eventually lead to Jesus' arrest. And what makes it chilling is how quietly it all unfolds. There's no dramatic explosion of conflict yet, just a steady tightening of the rope around Jesus' life. Every conversation feels like a trap. Every gathering feels like surveillance. And the more the leaders try to corner Jesus, the more he responds with truth that exposes their intentions, making them even more determined to silence him. But in the middle of this rising threat, the show gives us moments of breathtaking tenderness that make everything hurt even more. There's a shot of Mary, mother of Jesus, watching him from a distance as he teaches, and the mixture of love and dread on her face is almost too much to handle. She knows him better than anyone. She sees the weight he's carrying. And in the quiet sadness in her eyes, you can feel the ache of a mother who senses that her son's time is running out. The show doesn't need dramatic dialogue to express this. Just her expression tells the entire story. And honestly, that's one of the things I love most about The Chosen, its ability to make silence louder than words. Because sometimes the deepest pain is the kind that people don't speak out loud. We also get glimpses of Peter that reveal how deeply Season 6 will explore the emotional turmoil inside him. You can see the weight of responsibility pressing on him, especially whenever Jesus speaks about suffering or sacrifice. Peter's heart is torn between love and fear, loyalty and doubt, courage and confusion. Every time Jesus hints at what's coming, you can see Peter's expression harden, as if he's silently saying, "No, I won't let this happen." And knowing what lies ahead for him, his denial, his heartbreak, his eventual redemption, makes every moment in these early scenes feel even more painful. There's a moment in the preview where Peter stands close to Jesus, almost as if he's trying to protect him without actually understanding the danger. And the way Jesus looks at him in return, soft, knowing, almost sorrowful, hits with a weight that's hard to describe. It's a reminder that Jesus already knows Peter will break, and yet he loves him completely. That's the kind of emotional depth that Season 6 seems determined to capture. And the environment itself tells a story. The lighting is dimmer, the colors are colder, the crowds are more chaotic. Jerusalem feels like a place on the edge of eruption. You can almost feel the tension vibrating in the air. Even the weather in some shots looks symbolic. Heavier skies, harsher shadows, dust lingering in the streets like the world itself is preparing for the darkest hours in history. And the cinematography heightens that tension beautifully. The camera lingers longer on Jesus' face, capturing every subtle shift in emotion. It follows the disciples with shaky, restless movements that mirror their inner turmoil. It watches the Pharisees from angles that make them feel like predators stalking their prey. Nothing feels accidental. Every shot is a message. What's fascinating is how the show uses these early scenes to show the widening gap between Jesus and the world around him. Not in a distant or aloof way, but in a heartbreaking, deeply human way. You see moments where the disciples are laughing or planning or worrying, and Jesus stands among them with a look that seems to carry centuries of prophecy on his shoulders. He is with them, but he is also carrying something they can't yet see. And that duality, fully human and fully divine, is becoming more visible, more emotional, and more beautifully portrayed than ever before. These first looks make it clear. Jesus isn't walking toward his death because he's trapped. He's walking toward it because he chooses to, and that changes everything. This entire section of new scenes feels like the slow, heavy drawing of a curtain before the greatest moment in history begins. Season 6 isn't rushing. It's letting us feel every emotional shift, every wave of tension, every heartbeat leading to the cross. And if these glimpses are already this powerful, the full season might be almost overwhelming in the best way possible. As the first look footage of The Chosen Season 6 continues to unfold, the emotional pressure of the story tightens with every new scene, and honestly, it's almost impossible not to feel the weight building in your chest as you watch it. There's this powerful sense that everything we've seen across the past 5 seasons has been leading to the moments we're now glimpsing, moments filled with tension, heartbreak, and a kind of sacred intensity that lingers long after the clip ends. One of the most striking parts of these previews is how deeply the disciples' fear and confusion begin to surface. They aren't just worried about Jesus' safety. They're worried about their entire understanding of who the Messiah is and what his mission means. There's a scene where the group is gathered late at night, whispering anxiously, and the expressions on their faces say it all. They want to understand Jesus' warnings, but each time he speaks, they're left with more questions than answers. And that confusion doesn't make them weaker. It makes them painfully human. It makes us see ourselves in their struggle. They're trying to hold on to faith while the world around them shifts into darkness. And that internal battle is portrayed with such raw honesty that it's hard not to feel it deep in your heart. We also get a chilling glimpse into the growing political storm surrounding Jesus. and it hits with a force that makes your stomach twist. The early scenes show Roman soldiers patrolling the streets with a sharper presence than before. Their eyes are scanning every crowd, every conversation, every movement. It's like the tension in Jerusalem has become thick enough to touch. And in one moment, the camera follows a Roman patrol passing by a group of disciples, and the way the disciples stiffen, trying to hide their fear, says everything about how dangerous this season will become. The Romans aren't just background characters anymore. They're active participants in the growing threat. You can tell that the political climate is boiling, and Jesus is now at the center of a storm that no one fully understands. The religious leaders are whispering in the shadows. Rome is tightening its grip, and the people are torn between admiration, doubt, and fear. All of these forces are converging, and the tension is becoming almost unbearable. One of the most emotionally devastating glimpses is a moment where Jesus walks alone through a narrow street, and for a second, it feels like the whole world has stopped. The crowds around him blur, the noise fades, and the camera captures his face with this heartbreaking mix of peace and sorrow. You can almost feel the weight of prophecy pressing down on him. It's as if he knows exactly how little time he has left, and yet he keeps moving forward with this quiet, unshakable resolve. That small moment is one of the most powerful things in the trailer because it reminds us that Jesus isn't being dragged toward his fate. He is walking toward it willingly. And that makes every step feel sacred. It's the kind of scene that sinks deep into your chest and stays there long after you look away. But while the darkness around Jesus grows heavier, the love within his circle becomes even more intense. Another new scene shows the disciples sharing a rare, peaceful moment together, and it hits harder because we know how fragile their peace has become. There's a brief shot where John is writing something down while glancing at Jesus, and the look in his eyes is so full of awe that it honestly made me emotional. You can tell he's trying to hold on to every word, every detail, every memory. There's another moment where Mary Magdalene watches Jesus teaching, and the expression on her face carries both devotion and dread. She loves him deeply, and she's beginning to sense that something terrible is approaching. She doesn't say it out loud, but her silence screams it. And that's one of the beautiful things about these early scenes. They use quiet moments to reveal the deepest emotions. Meanwhile, the Pharisees are shown in meetings that feel colder and more calculated than ever. You can see their fear and pride fueling every whispered plan. They aren't just annoyed by Jesus' teachings anymore, they're terrified of his influence, and that fear pushes them to take darker and more desperate measures. In one scene, Caiaphas listens quietly as other leaders argue about how to handle Jesus, and the stillness in his face is more chilling than any dialogue could ever be. You can tell he's already made up his mind. Jesus must be stopped. And the frightening part is knowing that their determination will soon shape the most painful sequence in human history. These glimpses show us that the conflict is no longer simmering, it's boiling. And it's only a matter of time before the flames erupt. But in the center of all this chaos stands Jesus, calm and steady in a world that is unraveling around him. And the way Jonathan Roumie plays him this season is almost overwhelming. His eyes carry this mix of sadness and compassion that's impossible to ignore. There's a scene where he looks at his disciples as they argue among themselves, and the softness in his expression nearly brought me to tears. It's as if he's already grieving for them, grieving for the pain they're about to experience, grieving for the confusion that will shatter their hearts, grieving for Peter's denial, for Judas's betrayal, for the fear that will scatter them. And yet he loves them so completely that he remains patient, gentle, and steady. The emotional depth in his performance this season seems deeper than ever before. Everything about these first look scenes points toward a season built on heartbreak, truth, sacrifice, and divine love. It's building toward the greatest moment in the entire Christian story, the moment that changed the world forever. And the show is making sure that we feel every emotion leading up to it. Season 6 isn't just telling the story of the crucifixion, it's building the emotional framework that makes that moment hit with the full force of its meaning. And if these early glimpses already feel this powerful, the full season is going to be nothing short of extraordinary. As we move into the final stretch of these early glimpses from The Chosen Season 6, the weight of everything we've seen so far begins to settle in a way that feels almost overwhelming. Because this season isn't just setting the stage for the crucifixion. It's preparing our hearts for the emotional storm that will come with it. And the more scenes we see, the more we realize that the show isn't simply recreating the events of Scripture. It's inviting us to feel them, to sit inside the tension, the heartbreak, the confusion, and the overwhelming love that defines Jesus' final days. One of the most powerful elements of these new scenes is how clearly they show the disciples standing on the edge of emotional collapse. You can see it in their faces, in their trembling voices, in the way they cling to Jesus' words even when they don't fully understand them. There's a moment where they gather around a small fire, and the silence between them feels heavier than anything they could have said out loud. They're terrified, they're lost, they're desperate for answers that Jesus can't give them yet.